Hello, everyone, and welcome to this conversation to celebrate International Day of People with Disability 2021. This year, the theme is Fighting for Rights in the Post-COVID Era, which celebrates the challenges, barriers, and opportunities for people who live with disabilities in the context of a global pandemic. I'm Stephen Gordon, and I'm joined here today for this conversation by my co-chair on the VET EDI Athena SWAN Committee, Dr. Cliona Skelly, and Emma Golding. Emma is a senior executive assistant working in UCD for the last 6 years. She did her undergraduate degree in UCD in Greek and Roman civilization and ancient Greek language, a master's degree in Sheffield in Palaeoanthropology, and is now pursuing a PhD in the school using a one welfare approach to owners and their horses.
As if this isn't enough, having a full-time job and doing a PhD, Emma is also an international para-equestrian carriage driver who has represented Ireland several times in World Championships. She's working to normalise and encourage participation by people with disabilities within the equestrian world and is a member of the CHAS Committee Disability Working Group.
Hi.
So welcome, Emma. Thank you very much for agreeing to come and having a little chat with us today. We were very, very pleased you have.
No worries.
And so we've kind of a couple of things we'd like to kind of discuss with you about kind of disabilities and I suppose some of the impacts from UCD, and then also kind of with the theme of this year in a COVID sense. So,
sure.
So Emma, if you allow me to start, I wonder, how have you found working in UCD in terms of inclusion for people with physical disabilities?
If I'm honest, it's in general better than the rest of society. I don't know if that's to do with the infrastructure or that people are taken into account a bit more. But yeah, in terms of across the board, it's generally better.
Okay, so that's interesting. And do you think things have improved in terms of the facilities or attitudes since you started working in UCD?
I wouldn't say necessarily since I started working in UCD, because I haven't been working here that long, but certainly since I was a student when I was doing my undergrad. Back then, things like lifts across the campus, they were hidden away, they were old, rickety. In the main restaurant, you had to come out in through the kitchen in order to get into the restaurant. I remember the old lift in the science building was completely tucked away. So things have gotten better in the past 20 years for sure. And attitudes the same. There's still a way to go. But again, I'd say UCD in general, the community in UCD would be ahead of society in general. It would be great to get to the point where, you know, a student or staff member encountering a student or staff member in any situation isn't a surprise, or, you know, doesn't raise any difficulties or, you know, questions, anything like that. So that would be great to be a point to get to.
Okay, so that's reassuring to hear that you've seen obviously that improvement from your undergrad to your days here. I suppose though, you know, there's always room for improvement, and you know, if there was one thing that you could change in UCD, what would it be?
I'd pick two. One would be the ramps. They're not always as unsteep as they should be, and you get quite good at knowing which buildings to go through to avoid certain ramps. And the other thing would be more push button doors and having the ones that are there always working. Those would be two things.
Okay. So
I always wondered, because really it came to life when, because you work in the area that I'm in, so
yeah,
and like all the doors that are in the veterinary hospital have actually these portholes up high. So yes. I mean, there's one door that we've only one side, and the amount of times I've nearly crashed into somebody. And I was just thinking, from your perspective, the danger of going through a set of doors when you can't see what's on the other side must be just horrendous.
Yeah, I tend to wait
Um,
a few feet back so I can see if someone's coming, and then quickly go through, so that I don't get bashed by the door and whoever's on the other side doesn't either, because I can't see them either once I'm close to it. So yes, the doors with, you know, more transparent would be, would
almost like a
also
strip
be
down the whole
useful.
length of the door.
Yes,
So
yeah,
we'll definitely put in a request. Any doors being replaced, they have to have this instead.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
Quite a little thing, but it make a difference.
Yeah.
I suppose one of the things we wanted to do, and kind of was going back to the theme of this year, which is kind of fighting for rights in the post-COVID era, is really, you know, everybody had a lot of challenges with COVID, but I think that kind of people with disability probably had even more challenges than that. So, like, how would you see in terms of the greater challenges that you've had to face in this time of the pandemic?
I mean, I guess on top of the challenges that I think everybody would have faced, I mean, there were definite, you know, especially early in the pandemic, there were definite shortages of items that I would have needed, and I know go for other people with disabilities as well. Something that was, you know, quite difficult to maybe explain to people, is, you know, in a pandemic situation, you're told to and you want to keep your distance from people. There's a tendency sometimes when you're out of people trying to help without asking, and they will literally come and start pushing somebody's chair, or trying to, when I'm putting my chair into the car, just coming and picking it up and trying to put it in. And, you know, it comes from a good place, but especially in the situation that we're in, you don't want people on top of you necessarily. So that would have posed a bit of a challenge, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose COVID has done some things, and one of the things it has done has been, in terms of working practices, it has kind of instigated a lot of changes. There's been more flexibility in working hours, and people can work from home. Or, what opportunities do you think that there are for this kind of to go forward? And I suppose thinking about the theme, like, what can we bring forward from this time, which has been very tough for everybody, but how we can bring and make things like better in the future for people, especially with disabilities, but all over actually.
I think, I mean, definitely the things you just mentioned in terms of flexible and remote working. Also options for attending meetings and conferences remotely. All those things, you know, previous to the pandemic, you know, say people with disabilities all over the world, I don't necessarily mean, you know, just in Ireland, they would have been asking for those things for years in order to enable them to take part in the workforce, to take part in education in some instances. So the pandemic has opened up work and education to people who would have been previously excluded. So it seems like it would be unjust to just take those things away, when, you know, people would have been told before those, you know, they weren't possible. And then when the majority of people, you know, in the whole world needed them, they suddenly became possible. To take them away again, just because, you know, the majority of people would no longer need them, seems like it would be quite unjust. And the thing is, everybody benefits when things are made more accessible, whether it's, you know, physical accessibility, or with things like, you know, like remote working, like even outside of the work things. Things like curbside pickup, you know, remote doctor's appointments, if you're happy doing that, you know, those things make you know, they make things phenomenally easier for people with disabilities, but they also make things easier for everybody, you know, who may have a need to avail of them, or just, you know, or desire to avail of them for whatever reasons. So yeah.
I think, I suppose, being in a university as well, I mean, the fact that we're doing a lot of blended learning with kind of online and in, you know, kind of face-to-face teaching, it it is a greater opportunity for students as well to avail of both. Do you know what I mean? So that if somebody had some kind of condition that they couldn't attend in person, that they might be able to actually get a lot of the information from like with technology, because the technology is there and it has been used. So I suppose maybe now that it's there, it won't disappear, hopefully for you, but for everybody, really.
For everybody, that's it. Yes.
You know, I think
yes.
I think. So I suppose the other area that has been, I think, very difficult for everybody, and I think all would agree, is that there has been a lot of kind of negative effects on people's mental health. It has been really a stressful period. A lot of people have been isolated. And I suppose, you know, kind of what would you say to somebody who's gone through the pandemic and had the additional things of with, you know, kind of the physical disability and trying to cope with that too. So it's, you know, how have you coped with the stresses, and how have you any kind of not magic kind of things you say to someone like, this is what I found really helped, or these are the things that I would definitely avoid doing or do or not do? You've done this kind of.
I'd say, I mean, I think there have been times over the pandemic where I have kind of, to myself and to people that I've been talking to, I have related it to, you know, the period after I had my accident and became disabled. You know, it's a sudden change all of a sudden to the way you live your life, and everybody's kind of gone through that in a way in the last 18 months. And so I suppose the things that I'd say is to, first of all, ask for help if you need it, and if you find, I think everybody goes through kind of ups and downs, and if you find you're going through a difficult period, what I find helps is to focus on the essentials. So get what needs to be done, and then be kind to yourself. You know, if things are taking you longer because your concentration's not quite there, don't beat yourself up over it. You know, it's going to happen, and things will, you know, in general, they'll kind of reset again. And I think as people bear in mind that, you know, difficult times pass, but we can adapt to changes that might seem overwhelming at first. But then, I mean, obviously, definitely, if you find that you're not able to cope with that, is then to reach out. But again, I think the big thing is just not to beat yourself up if you find that, you know, you're not quite as productive or happy as you think that you should be. You know, that those things will come back again, for sure.
I think that's a very admirable and hopeful message, and hopefully we can all kind of do some of that. I mean, I know that UCD have got a lot of supports to try and help people, and I would also reiterate, if anybody feels that they need help, they should go and get it. So it's one of those things I think we're all much more aware of, and that in its own way is good. And I know that what part of the theme for this year was actually also to kind of recognize people with hidden disabilities that mightn't be obvious, and that they might need help. So I think that that's you know, a thing that really needs to be kind of focused on and supported, you know, going forward.
And I think that's I think that's been really fantastic, Emma, just to get your insight on things that I wouldn't be aware of, just what you've mentioned there. You know, I admit my own ignorance. You know, like you said, there's the simple things about the doors, the ramps, but also then the positive ideas of what you can take from this and learn from it. And like you said, the opportunities maybe that COVID and the way it's changed the world, and not to forget that those changes have also had positive benefits in terms of accessibility for a whole host of people. I think that's a really important message to get out across, that that through the process of fighting for rights, both pre and post COVID, there's some things that we should learn and implement and not forget. So that's I think it's a really hopeful message to leave everyone with.
So on behalf of Steve and I, can I just thank you for agreeing to do this? I know that it's not your favorite thing to do, but I think it's been really good to kind of highlight things that it is International Day for persons with disabilities. And I think that, you know, looking at the future with kind of a much kind of forward-looking and planning for a brighter future is a good thing for all of us to try and do if we can. So thank you so much for giving up your time to do it.
You're welcome.